actors who were forbidden from speaking with each other, an abandoned $30 million pilot, and Arya's retconned Dagger. Here are all the best TV secrets from House of the Dragon Season 1. The abandoned $30 million prequel pilot. Before House of the Dragon was officially on HBO's slate, HBO made a completely different Game of Thrones prequel, and you've never seen a frame of it. Bloodmoon, sometimes called The Long Night, was a roughly $30 million pilot starring Naomi Watts, set thousands of years before Aegon's conquest. Jane Goldman wrote it, S.J. Clarkson directed it, and it took place in the Age of Heroes. No Targaryens, no King's Landing, and no dragons. The pilot was finished in 2019, and then HBO watched it. The then Warner Media chairman Bob Greenblatt said it didn't deliver on the promise of the original series. Within hours of canceling Bloodmoon, HBO greenlit House of the Dragon straight to series. No pilot this time around. 10 episodes guaranteed. The Bloodmoon pilot has been locked away ever since. Even George R.R. Martin says he's never even seen the finished cut. The green finger glitch. One of House of the Dragon's most famous mistakes was brief, but impossible to miss once you spotted it. In Episode 3, when Viserys hands over a letter, Paddy Considine's left hand can clearly be seen wearing a bright green glove over 2 fingers. The glove was meant to help the team digitally remove those fingers in post-production, showing Viserys' worsening physical decay. Instead, the markers made it all the way into the finished episode. This is a very modern kind of blooper. Not like Daenerys' coffee cup left on set, but a digital amputation that never got finished. HBO later patched the shot on streaming, which means some viewers saw the mistake and later viewers never will. The real Iron Throne. One thing House of the Dragon deliberately fixed was the Iron Throne itself. George R.R. Martin had long said the original Game of Thrones version was too small and too tidy, so the prequel went bigger, messier, and more dangerous. The new throne was built from 2,500 hand-cast swords, creating something that feels less like a chair and more like a jagged metal landslide. A health and safety nightmare that actually made the actors genuinely nervous. It's much closer to the throne Martin always described. Ugly, sprawling, and actively uncomfortable. A throne a king should never sit easy on. The recycled blades. But not all of those 2,500 blades were forged for House of the Dragon. To bulk out the throne and its staircase, the production borrowed weapons from other major fantasy productions, reportedly the 2016 Warcraft movie and Netflix's Witcher. So the new Iron Throne is literally built from the weapons of rival franchises. Aegon melted the swords of defeated enemies into his throne. HBO's props department did the same with the props of competing series. 2 Rhaenyras never to meet. To make the season's biggest casting handover feel natural, the showrunners decided that the actors playing the same character should not meet at all. Millie Alcock and Emma Darcy, who play younger and older Rhaenyra, both wanted to sit down together to talk through the character's progression with director Miguel Sapochnik. Sapochnik refused. He wanted them to trust that they each had their own version, and was apparently worried that any meeting would lead to one of them mimicking the other. The same rule was supposed to apply to Emily Carey and Olivia Cooke, the 2 Alicents. Cooke later admitted she never got the memo, and had been quite happily chatting to Carey on set the whole time. As a result, we got a recasting that feels like a 10-year time jump in motion. Rhaenyra and Alicent have changed because the world has weighed on them, not because the new actors are doing impressions of the old ones. The Concorde and the Flying Greyhound. Each dragon in House of the Dragon was designed with its own identity in mind. In Syrax's case, that meant Concorde, the retired supersonic airliner. According to the VFX team, Rhaenyra's dragon was inspired in part by its sleek head and streamlined profile, helping define Syrax as elegant and fast rather than huge and brutal. Older dragons like Vhagar feel ancient and heavy, but Syrax was designed to feel smooth, refined, and aerodynamic, which then informed her movements and mannerisms. In other words, the dragons were given different design logic. In Syrax's case, less monster, more prestige aircraft. Meanwhile, if you ever thought Caraxes moved like a different species entirely, you were right. To animate Daemon's dragon, the team took their inspiration from Greyhounds, specifically the awkward way they sit, rest, and hold themselves. That helped give Caraxes the strange, twitchy, elongated body language. It's kind of perfect because it also describes Daemon. Caraxes doesn't move like a noble beast. He moves like a neurotic weapon of mass destruction. Less majestic lizard, more nightmare racing dog with wings. And if you're enjoying this video, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss our Season 2 breakdown. The time-traveling nobleman. Jefferson Hall has pulled off one of the oddest achievements in HBO's Westeros universe. He has played 3 different named characters. First, back in Game of Thrones, he briefly showed up as Sir Hugh of the Vale in Season 1, and was promptly turned into a cautionary tale by the Mountain. Then House of the Dragon brought him back and gave him not one role, but two, Jason and Tywin Lannister. Basically, Hall is so good at playing smug nobleman, he got asked to do it 3 times, which, when you say it out loud, doesn't really sound like a compliment. The crown moment. One of the best moments in Season 1 was not planned at all. In Episode 8, when Viserys struggles toward the Iron Throne, his crown accidentally fell off during filming. Instead of breaking the scene, Matt Smith, staying in character, instinctively picked it up and placed it back on Paddy Considine's head. Director Geeta Patel realized immediately that the unscripted moment was stronger than anything they had planned. Daemon spends the season circling the crown, craving it, resenting it, and being shaped by it. So the moment when he quietly returns it to his brother lands harder than any speech could have. It tells you, in about 2 seconds, that for all Daemon's chaos, his loyalty to Viserys was real. Rhaenyra's stylish burden. Rhaenyra's heir ceremony outfit in the first episode of the series was not just designed to look impressive, it was designed to be heavy. Costume designer Janny Tamime drew inspiration from Moroccan bridal wear for the look, especially in the jewelry and headpiece, helping make the ceremony feel ancient and ornate, a far cry from the more rugged leather and fur vibe of Game of Thrones. She also made the golden cape that Supergirl Millie Alcock had to wear physically heavy. It's exactly the kind of symbolism this show loves. Rhaenyra is being publicly elevated, glorified, and dressed like the future of the dynasty, but you can actually see that she is being physically weighed down by that burden in real time. The stunt that left a mark. The epic eye for an eye fight in Episode 7 was carefully choreographed, but the young actor still walked away with real injuries. Leo Ashton, who plays young Aemond, revealed that his hip was actually broken during the shoot, half joking that it made him as tough as his character. The cast filmed the sequence over several days with 5 child actors going at each other in tightly blocked routines, and Ashton has said that they were wiped out even on the first day, exhausted before any of the fighting had been filmed. What we see on screen as a chaotic 4-on-1 brawl is mostly precise stunt work, but some of the panic, the shoves, the way Aemond keeps stubbornly getting back up, might just carry something you can only get from kids running on adrenaline who've already been at it for days. Faking melees at the coronation. For all the real extras and giant physical sets in Aegon's coronation, the biggest moment was mostly digital. Rhaenys bursting through the floor on Meleys couldn't be done practically for obvious reasons. Mainly that dropping huge amounts of debris onto hundreds of extras is frowned upon these days. So the entire sequence was shot on a 360-degree blue screen. Roughly 40 real extras stood in the foreground. The crowd, the destruction, and Meleys herself were built afterwards. Eve Best filmed her dragonback scenes completely separately, with director Claire Kilner narrating the carnage off-screen until she went hoarse. It's a great example of how these giant fantasy scenes really work. The painted table really glowed. The painted table in the finale didn't just get a digital glow-up in post-production, it actually glowed for real. To create that effect, the production built a rolling tray underneath the table and filled it with real candles, so the firelight would shine up through the map of Westeros. Which means the warm, flickering light you see on the actors' faces was not some digital enhancement added later. It was really there on set. So when the firelight dances across the actors' faces in the finale, that flicker isn't a post-production pass. It's real flame, on a real prop. New school show, old school trick. But going old school had unintended consequences. Because the candles, torches, and braziers across the indoor sets were nearly all real rather than LED, the smoke and heat haze gradually became part of the visual texture of the series, especially in those tense indoor scenes where everyone looks overheated and on the verge of snapping. Honestly, it works well for this story. The Concorde already feels like a pressure cooker. It just turns out the set sometimes was one too. Driftmark in real life. The exterior of High Tide, the seat of House Velaryon on Driftmark, isn't digital. It's a real castle. The production filmed on St. Michael's Mount, a tidal island off the coast of Cornwall in England. Twice a day the sea covers and uncovers the causeway connecting the island to the mainland, exactly like the dramatic bridge approach to Driftmark. So, the wide silhouettes, the slow horseback rides up to high tide, the funeral procession, all real. The only major addition is the digital extension that gives the castle its imposing Valyrian profile. The same coastline did double duty elsewhere. Nearby Holywell Beach and Kynance Cove served as the stepstones, where Daemon battled the crab feeder. Good for fans to know, St. Michael's Mount is fully open to visitors, so it's one of the easiest pieces of Westeros to visit in real life. Twice a day, anyway. The Retconned Dagger. House of the Dragon took one of the most famous props from Game of Thrones and gave it a much bigger job. The Catspaw dagger made its first on-screen appearance as the blade used in Bran's assassination attempt in Season 1 of Game of Thrones, before eventually finding its way into the Night King's torso, courtesy of Arya. Here, though, it is reintroduced as a Targaryen relic carrying Aegon's prophecy. When heated, the Valyrian steel reveals a hidden inscription about the prince that was promised and the Song of Ice and Fire. So the dagger is a sacred family object tied to the survival of the realm. This makes its use later in the season even more ironic, because the same blade that is supposed to symbolize Targaryen duty and unity ends up being used by two of the houses squabbling over the tattered remnants of the Targaryen dynasty. Helaena the Dreamer. One of the changes House of the Dragon made to the source material was turning Helaena into a true dreamer. In the Fire and Blood book, she is a far quieter and less defined presence. In Season 1, however, her strange little mutterings become the most important lines in the entire season. When Aemon complains that he has no dragon, Helaena softly says, "He'll have to close an eye," a line that only reveals its full meaning later when he claims Vhagar and loses his left eye in the process. The same pattern appears again in episodes 8 and 9 with The Beast Beneath the Boards, which foreshadows Meleys erupting through the floor of the dragon pit during Aegon's coronation. What makes this detail especially powerful is who fails to notice it. Viserys is consumed by prophecy on the grandest possible scale, yet never seems to recognize that his own daughter is quietly foretelling disaster in the next room, so Helaena becomes a living example of one of the show's central ideas. History tends to announce itself long before anyone bothers to listen. And if you want to see a deep dive into Helena's prophecies, make sure to hit subscribe. Syrax the Swiftie. Not all of the show's clever listening is in the script. Some of it is in the sound mix itself. Sound designer Paula Fairfield, 3 Emmys and a BAFTA for Game of Thrones universe work, gave each dragon a distinctive voice by first assigning them a human personality in her head. Caraxes, Daemon's blood-red dragon, is a white boy who thinks he can rap. Syrax, Rhaenyra's gold, is a fidgety 13-year-old Taylor Swift fan. Really? While it may sound kooky, these characters form the foundation of the actual sound design. So Caraxes gets noises that are jagged, twitchy, and performative. Syrax gets ones that are bright, restless, and self-conscious. But what about Vhagar? Aemon's mount gets the strangest treatment of all. To build the voice of the oldest dragon in the show, Fairfield reached for human infant noises, because, as she told Variety, Vhagar's key traits are tired, cranky, and IBS. Layered with conventional roars, the babies create a sound that feels huge, exhausted, and horrifying all at once. And that's what makes it work. Vhagar isn't supposed to sound like a clean fantasy beast roaring on command. She's supposed to sound ancient, strained, and unpredictable. Less noble war machine, more living apocalypse with joint pain. "I will sit the throne today." Viserys' famous line hit so hard partly because Paddy Considine was fighting the role physically as well as emotionally. By episode 8, the prosthetics used to depict Viserys' decay took roughly 4.5 hours to apply, designed by Barry Gower, who would later create the clickers for The Last of Us. The wet, strained, difficult texture in his voice was not a post-production trick. It came from the sheer amount of makeup Considine was performing through in real time. Viserys is not just emotionally summoning the last of his strength. The actor is also battling the costume, the makeup, and the physical restriction of the role. The Hidden Family Tree. The opening credits of House of the Dragon are not just decorative blood and machinery, they are a mechanical Targaryen family tree. As blood flows through the model of Old Valyria, it passes through sigils representing key members of the dynasty. Some are fairly easy to decode once you know what to look for. A blue sapphire points to Aemond, referencing the gemstone he later wears in place of his missing eye. A spider sigil represents Helaena, tying directly into her fascination with bugs and her dreamer-like mutterings. A wine goblet shaped like a naked woman represents Aegon, a perhaps mocking emblem for the future king that fits his hedonism. And alongside all of that is the visual merging of Targaryen and Hightower blood, reinforcing the dynastic fusion that drives the entire conflict. But the most intriguing details are the ones that hint at people not fully present in Season 1. A small cup hidden below Alicent's line has often been read as a reference to Daeron Targaryen, while a possible third sigil branching from Aegon and Helaena has led some viewers to speculate about Maelor as well. As with Game of Thrones before it, House of the Dragon's credits don't just set the mood, they quietly reveal the story. And make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see full family trees for all the main houses of Westeros. The widescreen treatment. A filming choice that separates House of the Dragon from Game of Thrones is the frame itself. While the original series stuck with a standard TV aspect ratio, House of the Dragon switched to a wider 2:1 format, though even that was a compromise. Showrunner Miguel Sapochnik and pilot DP Fabian Wagner originally wanted to go all the way to 2.4:1, the full cinema widescreen ratio used by most modern feature films. HBO pushed back, feeling it was a step too far for premium TV. So Sapochnik and Wagner did something cheeky. They framed for 2.4:1 anyway on early shoots, protecting the wider ratio in case the studio relented, which it never did. Still, 2:1, the same ratio used by Foundation and The Last of Us, definitely works. It gives the show a more cinematic look, ideal for long banquet tables and dragons cutting across the sky. And some seriously awkward family dinners. Thanks for watching. We've got plenty more dragon lore on the way, so hit subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.